Hey, hey, welcome to the Sounds on Vinyl show. My name, as always, is Phil Boyer, and with me today, I have not one, but two Vikings. First, the guy that joins me pretty much every week, we have Professor Rockstar, Mr. Mike Svensson. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing good, actually. We're talking about vinyl records, of course. So
Awesome.
yeah. You see?
Always.
Always.
And we have Soren, the expert, the guy that knows everything about vinyl. If Soren doesn't know this particular thing about vinyl, then it doesn't exist.
No.
You can say, well, what about this?
Right.
And if Soren doesn't know it, then it's not even a thing. It doesn't. That's just how it is.
Completely right.
Yeah. And I have to mention every freaking time I have to mention his book, man. You have to check it out, even though it is in Danish. Who cares? Flip through the pictures. It's called Everything About Vinyl, but in Danish, Alt om vinyl. So check him out, Vinyl Denmark, on Instagram. And get his books for crying out loud.
Listen, Mike, since we're on video, I can just show it.
Oh, of course, man.
If you just,
we're doing video.
I'll just leave my chair, and if you just kill the time.
Yes. We will kill the time.
Yeah, we'll kill time. Tell a joke.
Tell a joke.
Oh, tell a joke. Yes.
So we're talking about vinyl records. Isn't that something that's new? That's completely new.
And he even shows up with a vinyl shirt. I mean, come on.
You see?
This is the Danish pressing plant in Copenhagen.
Oh, man.
North Sea Records. Some of my very good friends. Well, since you mentioned the book so many times, Mike, I'm very pleased with that. Well, this is the first edition of the book. It looks like this, and it's 280 pages of everything. There's an interview with Michael Denner. Merciful Fate. There's tons of stuff. Lots of covers.
That's great.
And we did a reissue version of it. With new foreword by a Danish rap artist. Some changes to the content, but overall, much of the same book. But a few important updates were made, and we changed the color as well to be able to separate them about. Yeah. So this is
what's fun with internet. I don't know if I mentioned this before. I never listened to our shows. I should, but I don't, so I don't remember what the fuck I'm saying half the time. But still, this is the way that vinyl collecting is a thing with people like Soren and me. I saw his book on Instagram some years ago, and I thought, damn, that's a great book. So I wrote him a little note saying, hey, I really dig this. And I said, you can buy it. And I said, of course, I'll buy it. And we've been friends ever since.
Absolutely.
You see?
Absolutely.
The beauty of collecting vinyl, the beauty of being a nerd, and the beauty of internet. There is good with the internet.
There is.
You see?
It's a nerd's paradise.
It is. It is. It really is.
Actually, all three of us have met on the internet. If it wasn't for the internet, we wouldn't even know each other.
No. That's crazy.
Thank you, whoever invented
whoever invented the internet.
All right, what are we talking about today? What are we doing?
We're doing a really important subject today. We're talking about labels, and I'm not talking about record labels. Well, we are, but what we are talking about are the labels on the actual vinyl, the round paper sticker thing in the middle of a vinyl, and what we can learn from that. I've got a pile of stuff here because when you go hunting, there are a few things that are very good to know. Because if you're looking for like a first pressing, or maybe you are looking for a reissue or a later pressing, whatever you're looking for, the label is a very good place to start. If the record cover or the back cover won't tell you anything, you can always look at the label, and combined with the info that we talked about on the last show, which are all the stuff that's written in the dead wax, you're actually pretty much set to determine if this is a first pressing or when it was pressed. Because knowing about labels will actually, you'll be able to sort of pinpoint to a certain extent, in what period a record was pressed, because record labels always have a sort of a fixed design to the record label, so that you know that it's an Atlantic or this is an island record. You know, it's visually the same, but they may change the design of the actual labels over time. So they might introduce one design that they go for about 2 or 3 years, and then they will change into another design. So you'll be able to see, if you know this, if you know a bit about a label's labelography. And that's the word we're going to use, labelography. This is the knowledge of labels. So you'll actually be able to pinpoint more or less when a record was released or pressed, because a re-release might not have the same labels as the first edition, if you know what I mean. It might be the same album, but they might have different labels. So,
quick question before you go further. When you say that the record label will use the same vinyl label for a couple years and they may change it, let's say Atlantic, will they use that same label design for every band, or will that be different, tailored to the band?
Good thing is,
I know, like with Iron Maiden, they might put Eddie on there, and obviously the track listing's different. But for the most part, that the label's logo and stuff, would that all be the same?
You are touching on a very important subject as well, because we have standard label design, and then we have artists who are so big that they want their own labels, despite the record label being a huge record label, if you know what I mean. So, for instance, in the case of Iron Maiden or Kiss, they were on Casablanca. But if you see a copy of Dynasty, you won't see the classic Casablanca label. You'll see a picture of Kiss, a photo of Kiss on it, and that's called Vanity Labels, because the artists have kind of chosen how the label design should be. So they kind of divert from the standard, so to speak. So good thing you said Atlantic, because this label here, the Atlantic label with the green and the orange, is more or less the same. They've used this for all time, almost all time, with very few exceptions. I think this label was introduced in, I don't know, 68, 69, perhaps, late 60s at least, and used to this day. So pinpointing when an Atlantic record was printed, you need to look for other stuff to be able to determine that. But the good thing about Atlantic labels is that, the UK, in the UK, they used a sort of a purple color instead of the orange. So if you and they only did that for a short time. So if you find, let's say, the first Led Zeppelin 2, maybe that's very common here in Europe, a UK pressing of Led Zeppelin 2, that will have, instead of the orange, it will have a purple color, and they actually call that a Plum label, because some of these labels have earned nicknames over time. So collectors will say, "Well, I found a Plum. I found a Led Zeppelin on Plum." Everyone will know what they talk about. Okay, so that means that it's a first pressing, because the labels the label design was changed. But in the US and also the rest of Europe, they used this combination of colors throughout, most of Atlantic's history. I haven't seen many vanity labels on Atlantic. They're more or less always the same. But Atlantic here, if you look, I don't know if you can see this properly, but underneath here, all the tracks, you'll see a string of letters and words. It says STA 69 or a PR, and the PR, that's the pressing plant called Presswell. So looking at a US pressing of an Atlantic record, you'll actually be able to look at the label and state where it was pressed and what factory it was pressed. On other records, we need to look in the dead wax there are also labels that might have a number, 2-digit number to identify the pressing plant. That's I think even, as I said before, Casablanca Records used to do that in the later 70s. And they would put the number up here somewhere or on the other side. Sometimes you need to look for that very closely. But Atlantic Label.
I have a question about
Sure.
about the Plum thing that you mentioned. The different was that intentional, or was it that just happened in the printing plant?
I think it was intentional because they used it for quite a while.
Okay.
I'm not really. I won't say that it's the fact because I really don't know. But since it was used on a lot of other records than just the Led Zeppelin 2, I think it was intentional. But they soon changed that, and they went for the American color combination instead.
Yeah.
So for instance, the first Led Zeppelin album, I think on UK is also the other Atlantic standard green orange label. But you'll find a few Plums out there because they were pressed within the same time frame.
Okay.
So
cool.
Okay. Now I'm going to show you another thing here. This is the Rolling Stones record on the Decca label, British, of course, English label. Now, as you see here, Decca is just the 5 letters here. You may find versions that has Decca in sort of framed in a little box, and that's called the boxed label. And this is called the unboxed label, unboxed Decca label and boxed Decca label. This is green. If you find a unboxed Decca record that's red, it means that it's a mono pressing.
Oh,
And the green is stereo.
Cool.
interesting.
Yeah. So that's how they used to identify different pressings and mono and stereo.
Okay.
Let's see. There are tons of information on the label. Sometimes there is very little, but on this label, there's a lot of information. You will see that it's made in England. It says here. And it's made by the Decca Record Company Limited, London. And then you over here, you have something, I don't know if you see it, it says NCB and it says, what it says, BIEM.
Yeah.
These are actually rights, it's called Rights Society. Because although a record is pressed in the UK, it might, they might press so many that they're going to export it to, say, Denmark or Sweden or Norway. So each country and sort of territory in the world, they're divided in rights societies. So NCB is actually Scandinavia. So this was pressed in the UK, but also for sale in Scandinavia, because that was a tax issue, and some records might be pressed in the UK to be sold only in the UK. But if they were to be sold elsewhere, they had to put these rights initials also. Yeah, it's a tax thing, and it's also about the rights to the music. So we as musical buyers in Denmark will pay the correct tax to the artists and all that. So we have organizations who run all that.
Okay. So you can find a UK label with the NCB.
No, yeah, well,
Imprint?
this is a UK label with NCB.
Yeah.
But if you find a UK label where it only says MCPS, that's the British Rights Society. So that means it was pressed in Britain, but only for sale in Britain.
Oh,
so
okay.
if you find a copy like that in Sweden, say, or the US or somewhere else, it was pretty sure it's an export version. Or an import version, of course, if you're in Sweden. They were imported to England. Otherwise, they were pressed in England and just distributed in Europe or wherever. You might also find GEMA, and that's Germany, and that's very at least here in Europe. When you go digging, you'll see a lot of German pressings.
Yeah,
and then you of course have a lot of information about that it's stereo, and you'll have a lot of phonographic copyrights rights, because this is a compilation. So they had to put all the years down where these different songs were registered first. So they have like 66, 65, 64, and 63 on the label here. You'll also find other labels where there's next to nothing on them and very little information. It really depends. But some record labels were really detailed about it. Okay, well, another I'm going to do a US label here. And this is sort of to show you that it matters what color and what design a record, a label has. Because this is a US first pressing of Strange Days by the Doors on the Elektra record label. And I don't know if you can see this, but I would kind of say that this is a brownish, yellowish color. I don't know, very hard to determine, but it's kind of maybe also a bit greenish, perhaps difficult to see. But this label, this record is from 1967, I think. And in 1967, Elektra used this color for all their releases. Now, in 1970, they changed the design to a red design. So, in other words, if you find a US pressing of Strange Days by the Doors with a red label, you'll know it's a reissue. Do you know what I mean? Or a repress, at least. Because then it was pressed in 1970, originally pressed or released in 1967, but with the red label, it's 1970 or later. Okay? And then, of course, in 1973, they changed the design yet again to this, with a butterfly. The Elektra label.
Oh, I have a couple of those.
Yeah, most people have. And they're very common. So this is just called the butterfly label. So as I said before, some of these labels have been given nicknames over time. So if you say butterfly label, people will know what you're talking about. Okay, but also an Elektra release. Again, if you find Strange Days with this label, it's from 1973 or later. Okay, I'm not sure for how long Elektra used the butterfly label, but well into the 70s at least, maybe late 70s. Now,
is it common that the record labels changed their labels like that?
Yeah, I mean, some labels will change very frequently, and that's a good thing, because it allows us to be able to pinpoint more exactly, what kind of pressing we have. But like with Atlantic Records, it's a different thing. Then you got to look for other stuff to be able to know when the album was released. I had the Led Zeppelin. Oh, that wasn't what I was looking for. I have a couple of more Elektras to show you, I think, because I've got a Motley Crue record somewhere. Oh, here it is. Now, the Motley Crue record, the first one, that came out in, when was it? 82, 40 years ago. Now, this is a US pressing of the album, and now the Elektra label is completely different again. So if you see this label, this is not a 60s copy or a 70s copy. This is from the 80s. You'll also find this label on I think Master of Puppets, because that was released on Elektra, the first issue, I'm pretty sure. Some of them were also released on Roadrunner, but in America it was Elektra. So a black and red design there. Right. I'm going to show you now a I'm doing a lot of US pressings today, I think. This is the first Van Halen album on Warner Brothers. Now you see it has this design of these palm trees, like an avenue in Beverly Hills or something. Well, since the headquarters of Warner Brothers was in Burbank, this is just called a Burbank Label. Yeah, because again, if you're out digging and you say, "Oh, I found this and this record on the Burbank," people will know that you know your shit. Okay. Of course, there's also a Warner with some buildings on it. You see those on Rush albums, later Rush albums from say mid '70s and later on. Also a Warner label, but with some buildings on it. I'm not sure what that label is called, but it probably has a name too.
I'm not sure why you should own any Rush albums either. So, moving along.
Come on.
Oh, Phil, you're a Rush fan.
I'm a Rush fan. I do like Rush. Old Rush. Like.
Sorry. Okay. Another label I'm going to show now is a huge label. It's Island Records, and luckily, Island Records was one of those companies that changed, like we change underwear. They changed label.
Ooh.
Okay, well, more or less.
So every Christmas,
roughly.
Yeah. Okay.
Something like that.
Something like that.
Some of the Island Records is a UK based record label. It was actually started to release music from Jamaica. There was a guy in Jamaica who world music and reggae music was starting to move on a bit there in the mid '60s, and certainly local music from South America and definitely Jamaica and whole that area over there was starting to gain some recognition in Europe and in the UK. So there was a guy who traveled to UK to start a record label to release this music to the hip people of London. Mm-hmm. But it it didn't fail, but they quickly moved on to more folkish and a bit more underground music, progressive folky stuff. And I don't have any more. I used to have a copy of the first Island label from the mid '60s, and that was white. But in '67, I think it was, they introduced the pink label. So they actually used the pink color for all their labels for many years, just in different variations. And this is one of the first ones. This is a Stand Up by Jethro Tull, and it's a UK pressing. Yeah, and you'll see it's pink, and it has a sort of an eye design. An eye design over it. So I don't know what to call it, but it looks a bit like an eye, I think. And that's just called the first pink label. First pink label. And then you will see other variations within a very, very short time frame. They did some different variations. This is a pink label called the Black Eye, because
that one I've seen.
It has an eye for the Island logo. It's still pink, but it's I think they only used this for a short while in 1970. So records on this labels are pretty rare if you collect labels. Then in 71-ish, they changed to probably the most famous Island label. This one, if you look closely, you'll see a pink circle all around the edge here, and that's called the Pink Rim label. And it has this Island logo, the new Island logo design underneath here with a palm tree and yeah, it was meant to look a bit exotic, I think. Yeah, this is a Sandy Denny record, great record by the way. But the Pink Rim record. Now later on in 1976. they did this. Now we're moving on to the bit more orange blue kind of stuff, but still with a palm tree and all the known features. This time the rim is blue. This might be called just a palm tree label, I think. This one was used from 1976 and onwards. Of course, nothing's easy as this, because some labels will use one color, maybe the same design, but one color for Europe and one color for the States. So you might also want to look into that to see if you've already stated that this is a US pressing, for instance. You'll have to know the history of the label's US market. How often did they change the design in the US, and how often did they do it in the UK, and so forth. We're going to visit an old friend here. This is probably one of the most famous labels in rock history. This is the Vertigo Swirl. This is called a Swirl label. Yeah. Now, Vertigo Records was established in 1969. One of the first bands to be signed to the label was Black Sabbath. And I actually, when I wrote the book, I wanted a picture of this design in the book, but I didn't know who actually did it. I mean, who came up with this idea? Because I wanted to write that. So I did a bit of Googling, and I found a guy called Olav Viper. I think he's of Norwegian descent, but he lives in the UK, and I think he's lived there most of his life. And today he's this is 53 years ago, so he's well into the 70s today. But I found him online and phoned him up, and I said, "Are you the guy who did this the Vertigo Swirl?" He said, "Yeah, that was me." I said, "Tell me about how do you come up with this?" And he said, "Well, he has just been made the head of Vertigo Records. So he was hired by Philips Records. Philips Vertigo was a sub label to Philips, so it was run by Philips. But Vertigo was established to seek more sort of hard rocking, progressive bands, more psychedelic bands. That Black Sabbath was perfect for Vertigo Records. But he had to come up with a label design as well. Or I don't know if it was his task to do that. He just came up with it and said, "What about this?" But he was sitting in traffic one day in London, and it was raining outside, and the windows were completely damp, and like it is pre-air conditioned and all that. Everything just steamed up. So he was doodling around on the window with his finger, just killing time and waiting for traffic lights, whatever. And he would doodle a bit on the window, and he came up with this sort of design that he said, "Oh, this looks interesting." So he quickly, when he arrived at the office, he quickly scribbled down what he had done on the window, and he asked one of his workers to sort of draw it again and do a design of it, and they came up with this. So the idea is, now the record label is called Vertigo. So the idea is, when you put this on the turntable and you sort of and it spins around, and you look here, you will actually feel a kind of a vertigo, because it's actually one of those eye tricks that it sort of spindles down until you're completely nauseous. So that was one of those fun tricks. And today, many of these Vertigo releases, because they also changed the design. Of course they did. But the first releases on Vertigo Swirl, some of them are just huge money. And this is the first Black Sabbath LP, by the way. So Vertigo always had this label on one side, and the other side you'll have the complete track list of side A and B, and the other information that you need.
Okay.
So
There is a rumor that there is sort of the first pressing is more difficult to spot because there is a swirl, but there's something else with it.
The thing
is that true?
This, I think, this must be an early second pressing, because I don't think they were pressed in such huge numbers to begin with, so they quickly had to do represses. But on the very first edition, underneath the Vertigo logo down here, if it says a Philips company written underneath here, you'll have a first edition, because that was removed for the second pressing.
Okay, all right.
So otherwise, that's more or less the only difference you'll see on the labels. So you have to look for the Philips company, a Philips company product, I think it says, underneath the Vertigo here. Then you have a complete first press. Talking about Vanity Labels, I was talking about Island Records before. Now, U2 is used to be, at least, one of the biggest bands in the world, and they were signed to Island Records, and I think they still are. But they here in the early 80s, they had this label, and this is what we call a vanity label, because it kind of it differs from the sort of standard Island Record label. So this is an own design. Of course, they need to have a few things like the palm tree and Island Records and all that, but more or less it's an individual design for the group. That's Vanity Labels, they were called. Okay, what are we going to show now? Oh yeah, this is also an important one. Deep Purple in rock.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Deep Purple, they were signed to EMI Records in the UK, and like Vertigo, that was owned by Philips, EMI also needed a label to more sort of hip rock progressive music for the young generation. So they established a company or a label called Harvest to release all that music on, and that was a stiff competition with Vertigo. They were like, they weren't enemies, nothing like it, but they were just sort of competitive in the same musical area, so to speak. And the first edition here of In Rock looks like this, with the yellow and green Harvest logo, and you'll see many of these albums out there.
Oh, yeah.
Even we have Danish artists that was released on Harvest here in Denmark, but with the same label. And
such a classic one.
Sorry?
Such a classic label.
Oh, yeah, such a classic one. And Pink Floyd was also released on Harvest. The sort of late 60s Pink Floyd, early 70s was released on Harvest, also with the same type of label. But then this is a copy of Atom Heart Mother by Pink Floyd. Now, this is not an original 1970 copy, because that would have the yellow and green Harvest label. This is an 80s repress. So this actually has black labels, and this is quite rare. You'll see these black label Harvest releases. You know, it's the same design, they just changed the colors. And this is a UK pressing from the, I don't know, 85, maybe 84, 85. I'm not really sure. It doesn't say anywhere. But I know that they used this black label for a few releases in the mid 80s. Also quite rare to find these black labels. Okay.
So let me ask you this: do you have a favorite label yourself that you're always looking for when it comes to an artist? Do you have one of those, like you want the Plum version of Led Zeppelin 2 or something like that?
Not really. But I use labels to see, okay, they released some great music on this label. What else did they release? Because they might be onto something really good, like Harvest or Vertigo. I might go and see, okay, what did they release else on Vertigo Records that might be great to listen to. Yeah. I don't collect labels as such. I don't need all Vertigo albums. Of course, they will be nice to have, sort of in terms of my pension and all that. But
yeah,
I don't as such collect labels. I just found it's just fun to know the history behind them. And that's kind of what I like about collecting. I don't need 80 different harvests.
Is the sound a bit different?
Well,
on like when it comes to, let's say we talk about the latest one that you showed with the purple, the first one with the green and yellow and the black and gray or whatever. Is there a difference in the sound?
Well, the source for both of these albums, whether it was released in 1970 or 85, they were the original master tapes. So the source is the same. It wasn't digitalized or remastered or any of such thing. They used the original masters for the 80s pressings. It was mastered by a different guy. The one I showed you with the black label harvest, there was a guy called Harry T. Moss who did that. You'll see his initials, HTM, in the dead wax. But he also cut Pink Floyd records in the early 70s. So, I mean, to my ears, it sounds just as fine as any older record from the 70s.
Yeah.
Once we get to the 90s and today and all that, they've started using digital sources for most records. So that's when you'll be able to maybe tell a difference in the sound. Mm-hmm. But on the old records that were sourced from the original analog tapes, sound pretty much the same. Of course, there are differences in the cutting and where it was pressed and all that might influence a tiny bit on the sound. But overall, you're pretty well off with an 80s copy of let's say Atom Heart Mother. Definitely. If you can find it, because it's quite rare actually. I've only come across it once with that black label. There was I forgot to show you the Vertigo. I said Vertigo changed the design. This you might have seen with the sort of weird spaceship.
Yeah.
This is called the Spaceship logo, for obvious reasons, of course. But this is what came after this swirl design. So again, if you find a Black Sabbath the first album with this label, it's not a first press. You'll be absolutely sure it's a repress or a reissue. Now,
I always thought that was a horrible label. I think it's so freaking ugly.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. It's a spaceship or I don't know what's going on there.
It's funny you say that, but because I think, was it on the last show we talked about Roger Dean, who did the Uriah Heep covers and Yes and all that. He used to draw these weird. That was actually him who did this Vertigo.
Okay.
That Vertigo label. So, but if you look at the spaceship, the way it's drawn, you can actually tell that it's him by looking at what else he has done. So now
the dude is stoned, man.
Sorry.
The dude is stoned. Fucking proggers, man.
This is the.
Jeez.
Do you have any jokes, Mike?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Okay.
I just hate people that do funky shit.
What have they done to you?
Oh man.
Okay. Oh, just kidding.
This is the Mike Oldfield Tubular Bells. This is actually also Roger Dean who did this, and this is the first Virgin Records label. Maybe if memory serves, the very first label was a different color, but the same drawing of these two young kids, and this is called the Two Virgin label. So I don't know if it's a lizard snake kind of thing around here. But yeah, Virgin Records, they quickly changed the design. I don't know why, but I really don't like this label. I don't know. It's a bit creepy, I think. I don't know if you can see it properly, but yeah, this is probably yeah. But that was also Roger Dean.
Yeah.
So he also made his mark on labels. Cool.
Pothead.
Sorry? What was that?
Pothead. Roger Dean.
Now, another one I'm going to show you. This is an old record by Dean Martin.
All right.
This is called Dream with Dean, and this was released on Reprise Records, and this is from, I don't know, late 50 something, 58 maybe. But this Reprise Records was actually started by Frank Sinatra. That was his own label. And on the first labels, on the first label version they did, up here there was a picture of Frank Sinatra. I said, regardless of who was on the album, it was a picture of Frank Sinatra because that was his label. But they changed it to this Steamboat drawing here in the corner. Well, corner. It's round, but on this upper half here, upper quarter here, there's a Steamboat. And later on, they changed. And this is probably the most common one you'll find out there, also on Reprise Records. But with this design, it's a sort of a brownish kind of color, and it's called the Steamboat Label. Okay, so
cool.
an album on Steamboat Label, everyone will know what you're talking about.
All right.
Okay.
Well, that's awesome. I think we should don't you think there's a lot of stuff going on here, and we've been talking our ears off. So why not split this into like 2 episodes, and we'll come back the next time and continue, because I got a lot of stuff too that I want to talk about.
Mike, have you mentioned Kiss on this show?
Oh, I totally forgot.
No.
I happen to have
shows, okay?
Yeah, that's a teaser for you right there. Oh, it's a good label here.
Oh, I can't think what. Can I guess? Is that Kiss Alive?
Oh, no, it's the first one.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So it's by a band called Kiss.
How do you
ever
spell
heard
that?
of them? K-I. Oh, that second bit is a bit tricky. But we'll be back talking about more Kiss, more with Soren, and more with Phil.
Cool.
That's right.
Stay tuned, people.
Stay tuned. Hit the website.
Yeah.
We got links in the description to everything. And if you're only listening to this, just a reminder, we'll have pictures and the video up on the website, so you can go and take a look at that and see all these labels and all their beautiful glory.
Yeah.
And with that, we'll see you guys next week.
See you guys.
All right.
Later.
Later.